I remember the silence first. It wasn't the kind that comes after a power outage or the hush of deep space. It was heavier, suffocating, the kind of silence that pressed into your bones and made you aware of every heartbeat in your chest. When the networks went dark, when the chatter of human civilization, 40 billion voices stretched across 3 worlds and 24 stations, collapsed into static, I was stationed aboard the listening array at the edge of the Kuiper relay. The air tasted of recycled metal and fear, and I couldn't tear my eyes from the comms panel as it flickered, failed, and died. The last transmission from Earth wasn't what anyone expected. No cries for help, no frantic orders, no desperate reassurances that the situation was under control. Just a voice, crackling through distortion, calm in a way that made my stomach twist. Asterisk, if you hear this, don't come back. The stars are breaking. Asterisk. I froze. Everyone else on the deck did too, aliens and humans alike, the usual tension between us forgotten in that instant. The words didn't make sense. Stars don't break. Stars die. Yes, they collapse or burn out, but breaking? It was nonsense, a riddle meant for someone else. Yet deep down, something about the tone told me it wasn't nonsense at all. We stared out into the black, searching for answers we couldn't name. The constellations we knew flickered, like a projection stuttering on a failing screen. My chest tightened with a fear I didn't want to name. The others turned their eyes to me, as if being human meant I might understand better than they did. But I didn't. All I knew was that something vast, something unseen, had touched our homeworld, and Earth's warning was not just for us. It was for everyone. Days passed in a haze of confusion, every hour heavier than the last. The usual hum of chatter in the corridors of the array turned to whispers, and then to silence. We received fragments of transmissions, garbled screams, half-finished warnings, but nothing whole, nothing we could hold onto. The alien technicians began leaving in quiet waves, their shuttles slipping into the void without ceremony. They called it precaution, but I could see the truth in their eyes. It was fear. They knew something we did not. I began to overhear fragments in the mess hall among those who remained. Old words resurfaced in hushed tones, the kind usually buried in ancient archives and dismissed as myths. They spoke of asterisk, the star veil asterisk, a hidden mechanism, older than empires, older perhaps than the galaxy itself. A failsafe buried in the cosmos, waiting for civilizations that grew too quickly, spread too widely. A judgment, not by gods or kings, but by the universe itself. At first, I thought it was just alien superstition. But then came the sight that burned itself into me forever. From the observation deck, I saw Rigel, a star so vast, so brilliant it had been a beacon since humanity first looked up from Earth. It pulsed once, bright enough to turn every panel and wall around me white. And then, in less than a heartbeat, it shattered. Not an explosion, not a collapse, just silence. The light was gone, the star erased, as if someone had blown out a candle in a dark room. No ships had fired. No weapons had been unleashed. It was something else entirely, something so far beyond our understanding it felt like magic. In that moment, I finally believed the whispers. The galaxy itself was killing us. And for reasons no one could explain, every eye turned toward humanity. The station filled until its halls groaned with life, a tide of desperate voices in a dozen tongues. Refugee fleets limped through the jump gates one after another, scarred ships barely holding together, carrying survivors who had fled burning skies and dead suns. Entire families huddled in docking bays, clutching fragments of their homes, trinkets, scraps of cloth, data crystals that still held memories of worlds now erased. You could feel the weight of loss in every corridor, like a gravity that pressed down on all of us. I had never seen aliens look so fragile. The proud Jurith, who once boasted of their unbroken war record, now kept their eyes down, whispering prayers to silent gods. The crystalline Vayari sat motionless in corners, their light dimmed to a mournful glow. And yet, despite the endless grief, there was a strange pattern in their desperation. They all sought out the humans. They found us in the halls, the command decks, even in the mess lines, pressing us with questions we could not answer. One elder of the Zalati stopped me as I passed, his claws trembling as they caught my sleeve. His eyes were glassy with terror, yet his voice held conviction. "You don't understand," he whispered. "None of you humans understand. You are not like the rest of us. You adapt. You endure where we cannot. The veil fears you." I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. We were scattered miners, farmers, engineers, survivors clinging to half-built colonies. We had no ancient fleets, no divine weapons, no secret knowledge. What could possibly make us special? But the way the refugees looked at us, with desperate hope shining through their grief, unsettled me more than any star collapsing. They didn't want salvation. They wanted defiance. And somehow, impossibly, they believed that humanity alone could give it to them. The First War Council was chaos, a storm of voices clashing in a chamber too small for the weight of what was at stake. Representatives from every surviving species packed into the hall, their banners draped in ash-gray mourning. The air hummed with anger, fear, and the sharp scent of ozone from malfunctioning air recyclers. Each faction shouted over the other, their voices rising in desperation as stars continued to wink out beyond the windows. The Carthans, reptilian and scarred from centuries of war, pounded the table with clawed fists. "We surrender. There is no fighting a force that devours suns. We must offer tribute, erase ourselves from notice." The Lorati, towering and skeletal, hissed their own solution: abandon technology, burn the archives, scatter to primitive worlds, and hide like prey hoping the predator loses interest. Others shouted for exile, for fleeing the galaxy entirely, as if escape to another universe was anything more than fantasy. Amid the uproar, a single human voice cut through, sharper than a blade. Admiral Reyes stood at the center, her uniform worn but immaculate, her presence commanding. She raised a hand, and the chamber slowly fell into silence. "We don't hide," she said, her voice steady, carrying over the assembled crowd with a weight that silenced even the loudest objections. "Not anymore. Not ever. We break what breaks us." It wasn't a speech, not some grand call to arms. It was a challenge, a declaration as raw and simple as fire. And it struck something in all of us. From that moment, the tone shifted. Plans began to take shape, mad and desperate, but plans nonetheless. Alien warships were stripped and refitted, beside human freighters turned into crude battleships. Weapons no sane species had ever tested were designed in frantic bursts of inspiration. If the galaxy itself wanted us erased, then humanity would teach it what defiance truly meant. The battle at Vega was never meant to be a victory. Every officer knew it, though no one dared to say it aloud. Vega was a sacrifice, a test of whether our desperate weapons could even scratch the thing we were facing. As our fleet assembled in the shadow of the star, the silence on the comms was suffocating. Ships of every shape and size hovered in formation, patched together from wreckage and ingenuity, crews running on fear and determination. And then it came. The Star Veil did not arrive as an army. There were no ships, no fleets bristling with cannons. It unfolded like a horizon, a lattice of light stretching across the void. Wherever it touched, reality thinned. Planets dimmed. Stars faltered. Entire moons unraveled into dust without a sound. Watching it was like watching a dream tear itself apart. On the resolute asterisk, we braced at battle stations. Our weapon, if it could be called that, was a monstrosity of human stubbornness and alien theory, a gravity spear forged from unstable drives and mathematics no one trusted. Its creators swore it might work, or it might tear us all into fragments smaller than atoms. But we had no other choice. When the order came, the resolute asterisk fired. The void cracked. That's the only way I can describe it, like glass breaking across the fabric of space. For the first time, the lattice hesitated. The Star Veil faltered, its endless advance shuddering as though confused. A cheer erupted across the fleet, raw and disbelieving. For one moment, against all logic, against the silence of collapsing suns, we had struck it. We had made the impossible bleed. And in that instant, humanity's legend was no longer one of survival. It became one of defiance. Victory at Vega was a spark, but sparks burned fast, and the cost became clear almost immediately. The debris field stretched for light years, a graveyard of shattered hulls and drifting corpses sealed in frozen silence. Out of the thousands of ships that went in, only a fraction returned. I still remember the list scrolling endlessly across my display, names of friends, crew, whole families erased in seconds. Their voices lingered in my ears, cut off mid-laugh, mid-scream, mid-breath. And the star veil was learning. That was the worst part. Each battle after Vega, it adapted. Where our gravity speeds once staggered it, the lattice absorbed the impact, bending around our fury like water around a stone. Where our singularity torches once ripped holes in its endless veil, it countered with bursts of white fire that devoured entire fleets. It was no longer just unraveling stars, it was unraveling Asterisk, our star. Fear began to eat away at the survivors. Some commanders muttered about retreat, others about hiding as the Lorati once begged. The council split again, voices raised in panic, but humanity stayed at the center. No matter how many ships were lost, no matter how many colonies winked out of existence, the galaxy kept looking to us. Not because we were winning, but because we refused to stop. I'll admit, I almost broke. In the silence of my quarters, staring at the faint flicker of distant stars, I asked myself what the point was. Were we just prolonging the inevitable? Were we nothing more than stubborn animals thrashing against the jaws of a predator too vast to even comprehend? But then I remembered Earth's final broadcast. Asterisk, don't come back. The stars are breaking. Did Asterisk? It wasn't despair. It was a challenge. And if the universe thought it could erase us quietly, it had underestimated humanity. We didn't win in the way war stories usually end, with parades and banners and a clean tally of the fallen. No, what we did was far messier, far louder, and far more final. The last battle wasn't fought for territory or survival of a single world. It was fought for the right of every living thing to exist at all. The veil stretched across the heavens, a burning net of white fire that swallowed constellations whole. Our fleets were shadows against its brilliance, a swarm of wounded creatures lashing out one last time. Admiral Reyes gave the order no one else dared. Every ship, every weapon, every unstable core we had left was to be unleashed at once. There would be no retreat, no survivors if it failed. The comms went quiet, a silence filled with the knowledge that this was the end, one way or another. When the countdown reached 0, we turned the galaxy itself into a weapon. Reactors detonated like chain suns. Gravity spears fired until their casings tore apart. Singularity torches ripped holes in space, screaming as they collapsed. The combined fury of hundreds of species, led by human defiance, struck the veil in a single impossible heartbeat. And it broke. I saw it splinter like glass under a hammer, the lattice unraveling into fragments that dissolved into nothing. The constellations twisted, bending like liquid. And for the first time, the great silence ended with the sound of stars screaming. We hadn't destroyed it completely, but we had shattered its certainty. We had proven the universe itself could bleed. As I floated in the wreckage, my suit alarms shrieking, I realized what we had done. We hadn't just survived. We had rewritten the rules. This was the day humanity broke the stars.